If you're lucky enough to get a really good acoustic or something that's special, which the Taj Mahal was, and then there's a history to the place and a mystery to it, that all becomes a part of the music. The pyramid, as big a structure as it is, didn't have the length of reverberation that the Taj Mahal did. It was different. The rooms weren't as big inside, for one thing. They're smaller chambers. But still, it's a mystery to it, and it's an ambience to it, and a history to it, and it has its own unique sound. So that was wonderful to be in there. It was difficult to get permission to be in there alone. It took me about 4 or 5 days in Cairo. I was there just for a week, and toward the end of that week or so, hadn't been able to get permission to be in there after hours, so that no one would be walking around and making noise as tourists would come in and out of these different chambers. So I finally got permission to do that, and spent 3 hours inside alone. Very quiet and very different, and then I had a good recording engineer with me that came over from Toronto, named David Green, and we were in there and just roll the tape and just play. All totally improvised, as was the Taj Mahal. But it's a special feeling. It's hard to... I think each person has a different experience when they go into places like that. Some people that I read stories in the King's Chamber, for instance, people had some frightening experiences. Other people didn't feel anything. Other people feel a great peace, which I did. And I sort of heard voices, which was sort of strange when I sat quietly and meditated before I started playing that evening and no one was there. It seemed like things from the past. I believe it was a place of initiation, especially the King's Chamber was the main chamber, where initiations took place of the mystery schools, people that were, well, the esoteric approach in philosophies and experiences that were ready for that. And so this was their graduation, if you will, or their ceremony or their initiation into the higher order of these things, and had personal experiences. So they must have been chanting in there. And what I felt of that I was hearing was the sound of these chants is still hanging around in the walls in there when you were quiet enough that that could be heard. So I heard them, and so did my recording engineer. As he sat quietly, he heard the same thing. I don't know what he heard, but he heard voices. Like I said, I heard voices. He did too. So my only sort of mystical experience in there, other than it was a powerful place. Well, I guess it's my dharma, if you will, and I was just supposed to be there, and there I was. You know, a good friend of mine is Tony Bennett. I worked a lot with him, and he's a wonderful man and a great singer and a great jazz guy. He just loves jazz and jazz musicians, and a wonderful person. And one of his favorite things is when we have a lot of discussions, and he'd say, Paul, I just show up. And that's a good one. You just show up. You don't know what's going to happen in life. In fact, who does really know what's going to happen from day to day? So the whole thing is, when you get out of bed in the morning, show up for life. Just show up. Be open to the moment. Be open to new things happening to you, rather than to always expect it to be a certain way or want it to be a certain way, which we all do. We're all trapped in that. But the more you can free yourself and just show up, whatever your day is, show up at work. If you have a 9-to-5 job, just show up. But be open to conversations you might have throughout the day, or different people you might meet, or an unexpected phone call, a conversation, or who knows. Just be open to what could present itself to you that day. And then life takes on a little different meaning, and sometimes it can be very profound and life-changing. You could have an experience that changes your whole life. So, just a key word, I like that expression, just show up. Also, he says, Paul, people could sometimes say, Tony, why don't you do something new, or sing some new tunes, or this. He says, I just sing good good music. I don't think that'll ever go out of style. Like the great American composers, Rodgers and Hart, and Gershwin, they're just people from the early 30s and the 40s. It's just the good songwriters. The jazz musicians love to play their songs, the standards we call them. Porgy and Bess or George Gershwin, that'll last for 1,000 years. It's just beautiful music coming out of that. So he just sings, and he's proved to be right, because generations are coming and going, and then a new generation comes. Tony's singing the same basic tune, but they haven't heard it. It's new to the upcoming generation, and the next generation will be new to them too. And they'll say, "Well, what's that?" Well, that's a tune with a melody to it. Oh, that's unique. A melody that I can hum and sing, and it's beautiful arrangements, and it's really pretty sounds, and wow, that's unique. It'll always be, I think, always be valid if it's good music, and that's his philosophy, and he's proved it right. Art doesn't have anything to do with the times. It just is by itself. That's why we can still listen to Bach and Mozart and Beethoven and people from the classic period that's 250, 300 years old now, and enjoy it. It has nothing to do with the era, really. It's just art. But other types of music and art reflect the culture at the time in which we live. So to ask me how I feel about it, I can't relate to a lot of it, but that doesn't mean I can't. And I would not want to judge it, because who am I to say? Music is a personal experience. I've gotten to use electronics myself to some extent, and the bands I've had, quintets, over the last couple of decades, have certainly had electric bass and electric guitar, and I use the digital delay signals, electronic, and I certainly, my keyboard player has a synthesizer and effects. But I choose to use it in my own way, which I would, in my view, be more musical rather than effects. And it can use those things in a valid musical way. But it's so personal. Music is just personal, and it reflects the times. So the younger generation, or the young people today, they live in a world which is pretty chaotic, pretty hectic, and I don't find too much peace around it. So the society is reflecting that. So do I like it? It's not how I feel inside personally to a lot of it, but that's the way it is, and that's what I see. And I see that it is a reflection of the culture of the younger generation in general. And each younger generation is going to come up and have their own feeling individually and collectively, and the arts will reflect that. I would not attempt to, nor would I want to, judge it other than to say what I've just said. The David Lynch Foundation, whose aim is to teach 1 million children throughout the world to meditate. And of course, that resonates with me, because I go back over 40 years now to that was important to me and has been the basis of my life over those years as a foundation, and it certainly served me well. And also in the beginning, when I first came back from India, I was part of what was starting as a student movement at the UCLA in LA. And the students were interested in meditating, and it's grown because it's such a tool. It's a wonderful tool to serve a person in their lives, in their daily lives. It's all it is. And finally, people are understanding that it's not a religion, and it's not a philosophy, and it's not telling you in any way how to live your life, what to do or not to do. However, it is giving you a technique where you can get rid of some stress. In fact, get rid of a lot of stress, so you're going to feel better, you're going to be healthier, you're going to have a clearer mind, which opens up to the creative flow, which is within all of us. We're all creative. We're humans. We were created in the image of God, however you want to interpret that. but we imagine, we can image in our minds and then bring forth what we image. And so we're all creative in whatever way we choose to be. And so this is a tool that will open that up, the creative flow, so we can have a happier life. It's a tool. It's a tool. And David Lynch, it's amazing. Your kids in the inner cities, all over the world, seeing it down in Brazil. There's little video clips on YouTube which show these kids talking about how they're feeling less angry and feeling better about themselves and getting along better at home and in school and with their fellow kids, playmates. So it's finally being recognized as a valuable tool. And everything lies in the young. The youth is what's happening because it's the future generation going to control this world for a couple of generations, and the next one comes along. So it's always the youth, always the young, always the young. And I don't think anything could be more valuable than to have a young person start meditating, which is to open up your potential, your inner potential, and make life happier and easier. And that's what these kids are finding out. So I'm very excited about that. I would support that, and it's nice to hear Quincy Jones' name mentioned again because he's been a powerful force in music. I've known him for so long when he was strictly a jazz musician, long before he came to Hollywood and became a great writer and then producer and on. He's a wonderful, creative guy, amazing. And that he would still be active and recommend something like that is wonderful and appropriate. Now, Kennedy started that with the Kennedy Center for the Performing Arts in Washington. So during his era, he wanted that, and Quincy was a part of that. But I think that, I think his idea of having that is valid, and if anyone's going to be receptive to that and bring it about, if he can, would be Obama. So I think it's, I'm very thrilled that this is being presented to him, and I think we have an administration now that would be receptive to that, understand the value of that, and to put it forth and give it a good start. I mean, we're old enough now in the United States that we have a culture, and we have a heritage. We're still very young, 300 years old, but that's really young in the world and societies and so forth. So the culture is what keeps and will keep a society going. If it doesn't have a cultural base, it's not going to last very long. And we have in American enough music in all categories, certainly in jazz and in the Great American Songbook, as we were talking about earlier, that Tony Bennett represents, and in the classical field too. It's just we have our own thing to say now, which reflects who we are and our culture and how we think over here. So it's a wonderful idea. Well, in a way, it's. I'm sitting here watching it. It's so much different than when I was young. The opportunities are different. There are no more record companies. The whole thing has changed. But that's life, and sometimes changes come quick and dramatically, and everyone sort of gets tossed around and say, well, what's happening now? But it has opened it up to entrepreneurial things, more independent, a different way. There are things like CD Baby. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but people can present their own product, and this website or this entity will show you how to promote it and put it out there so you can do your own thing. The recording technical devices today, anyone can have a good quality recording unit in their garage, not the garage band that comes off of the internet, but I mean technical or literally in your house. You can have some good equipment for maybe $5,000 or $10,000 at the most, if that much now, whereas these would be $500,000 to have a really good recording equipment in a big studio. So it's just all changed very quickly. But many people were excluded when it was around, when I was around, that didn't have recording contracts and weren't able to break into that had a lot of talent. So this opens that possibility up. Then also there are a lot of people recording today that shouldn't be recording because they have no talent. But they can put out a little CD or something and sell it and pass it off as music, but they really haven't spent 20 years learning a musical instrument and being well-grounded in music. So I don't think it carries any kind of a weight or a charge that would really affect people deeply and in a positive way. But that being said, so what? It just opens up the field of people being more creative. And it's just all changing. I don't know where it's going to go, but it's going to go in the direction that it's headed, and that's the Internet. You know, like most things, there are double-edged swords. It depends on how you use it. It's just a power, and it's a new thing, and it's very powerful. We can use it in a constructive way or a destructive way, and television shows us that. The Internet is showing us that. And there's stuff on there that shouldn't be on there. It's not helping society and not helping the world. And then there are other things on there that say, whoa, look at the information that's available should you choose to make use of it. It's a very, very, very powerful tool. Hopefully the consciousness, and I guess we haven't talked about that we have in a roundabout way, but that's the main thing, is to develop one's consciousness or awareness of what's really important in life and how it's going to give us a better life individually and collectively as a human race, as a species. Because the consciousness is pretty low. The fact that we're still having wars and still going around killing each other, you don't even know why, it's crazy. It's total insanity. And I fear that the world is not going to be able to tolerate that too much longer. So we have to raise consciousness, that is, just become aware of higher values in life and really see what that's the most important thing. And the most we can do, and it's a lot, is to change our own lives. Is that if we see that as important, then individually we should go for making our lives more worthy, to appreciate the gift of life, the value of life, which is not to kill each other. But kindness. The Dalai Lama all of a sudden is on the scene now. 50 years ago, in the West, what is that? Dalai Lama, what is this all about? But now Buddhism in the West, and the concept of kindness and respect and valuing all sentient beings, all life has value. And let that permeate the consciousness a little bit. And so it begins on an individual basis. And we can and will change the world individually. But I see that. I've seen it in the last 45 years that I've been involved in teaching meditation and looking and being involved with, if you will, higher consciousness or growth. And I've seen a big change. I mean, just the fact that 6,000 people showed up at Radio City Music Hall and was sold out in 10 minutes when the tickets went on sale, and we raised $3 million, and we're talking about teaching kids around the world to meditate. I mean, that's a big thing. And it's in line with what I've just been saying. It begins with the individual. You can't talk about peace and people are not peaceful. You can't talk about happiness and people are not happy. It doesn't work that way. So you have to walk your talk. You have to be happy, then you can talk about happy. You have to be peaceful, and you can talk about world peace. Otherwise, it's a waste of time, and it doesn't make any sense and has no value. Consciousness, to me, is the key word, and that's the main thing that in our own way we should go. Just updating your value system, to me, would be raising your consciousness. What's important in life, and find a way to go there. Whatever the technique, but you got to do something. You got to do the work. No one's going to do it for you. Everyone's got to come to a point in their own lives where you see this as being valuable, and you want to go for it. And it takes work like anything else to change and to be other than the way the world is. You have to change. And if you're basically, and I was for many years, a very angry person. Well, that doesn't serve me anymore. I reached a point where I said, you know what? It's not helping me. It's not making me happy, and my anger is actually getting in the way. And so I better change that. Well, it's not easy. It's not easy to change basic patterns that have been with you for a long, long time. It takes work, and most people don't want to do the work. But the answer is no one's going to do it for you. In raising our level of consciousness and to do the work that's necessary to evolve. Yeah, well, if we don't want to change or we don't do the work, then nature will come along and force us to change. That's all there is to it, and I think that's what's happening. It's a big correction, like in the stock market. It's correction when things get pretty crazy, one way or the other. The stock market supposedly and hopefully still will correct itself. So when humanity gets too far off course, something's going to come to force a change. If we don't do it voluntarily, we're going to have to do it one way or another. So this difficult period that we're going through, as you just mentioned, with at least the financial thing, is just part of the change. It's just part of that. A lot of things have been going wrong for a long time. Sooner or later, the pendulum swings back the other way, and a correction takes place. But that's what we're involved in now, is a big correction, and on many levels, affecting everybody in the world, because it is a world problem. So the positive thing is it's necessary, and in the past, and I assume it'll be that way in the future, we'll come out of this, and it'll be better. But it's going to be work, and it's going to be some rough times ahead. That's the way it is. She has her own website, AnnMortifee.com, AnnMortifee, AnnMortifee.com. She's an icon in Canada. She's toured all over the world. Toured with Harry Belafonte. She's been on stage in New York in musicals. She's written her own musicals and got a lot of CDs out. And then this is in some years gone by, but got one of the most amazing voices. And we've known each other for a long time, 40 years. But then we finally got together a few years ago when both of us were free to do so and got married. And it's just been wonderful. She's a brilliant musician and an unbelievable voice. Got a 4-octave range and writes incredible songs. And her main thing is theater. So she writes musicals, writes the music, writes the book, the story. Very, very talented. So we are starting to explore possibilities with just two of us, her voice and my flute. We're both not into looking to resurrect careers, because we've done that. But if something new can come along and we enjoy it, and it's musically valid, and again we're having fun with it, then we'll proceed. That's why there's a category out there, and I guess I'm in that. It's called world music. Because if people can come together musically, then certainly that's a metaphor for how we should be able to come together on all levels. It's been my experience, because I've been fortunate enough to travel a lot. And I've been in the Soviet Union 4 times with my band during the transition from strict communism to glasnost and perestroika and the things that they were calling the changes to a more free, open society. And music has always been something that people relate to as differently as the political system can be, and your religious beliefs, and your social thing, and just everything is so different. But music, right away, whatever the differences are, or grievances or whatever, that all falls away, and people are just automatically just friendly and enjoying each other and communicating in a nonverbal way through the music. So it's happening, with this category called world music. You take Indian tablas and you put it together with a Brazilian beat, and then maybe add an Afro-Cuban rhythm along with it somewhere, and some jazz on top of it. And anything works. I've played with musicians all over the world and found it easy when you just don't try to be other than who you are. So if I'm playing with an East Indian musician, let him be who he is, and I'll be who I am. But the common denominator is rhythm, and in this case, improvisation, which are usually two elements found in any culture. And then, it works. So if you can get together with musicians that are so different, and you sit down and play, and music comes out that makes sense and people enjoy, then obviously we can do this in our daily lives as human beings. That's the whole thing. It's really music. So you talk about Quincy Jones, and it's very important. And viewed in this light that we're talking about now, his proposal to President Obama is even more important. We have to set the way for things to change, as is being done right now, and music should be in the forefront.